She followed every rule. Hands visible, voice calm, child beside her, and still the handcuffs clicked. This video isn't just a story about one arrest. It's about power, prejudice, and a moment that exposed an entire system. Because what the officer didn't know was this: she was not just a random black mother. And those weren't just SUVs that arrived. Stay till the end, because the truth revealed in the final minutes changed police policy forever. Marquesela Johnson was not looking for trouble that day. She wasn't running late. She wasn't arguing. She wasn't even distracted. She was doing what millions of mothers do every single day: buying groceries. It was a small neighborhood store, nothing fancy. The kind of place where people recognize each other's faces but don't always know their names. Marquesela parked, stepped out of her car, and adjusted the strap of her son's backpack. Her son, Caleb, was 7, quiet, observant, the kind of child who noticed everything, even the things adults hoped he wouldn't. She squeezed his hand gently. "Just a few things," she told him, "then we're going home." Her voice was calm, always calm, because calm was something Marquesela had trained herself to master. What no one around her knew was that Marquesela had once lived a very different life. Before this quiet neighborhood, before this ordinary afternoon, she worked in logistics analysis for a federal contractor. Numbers, timelines, movement of money and materials. She was good at it, too good, because eventually Marquesela noticed patterns that didn't make sense. Invoices that didn't match shipments, budgets that doubled overnight, names that appeared where they shouldn't. At first, she thought it was a mistake. Then she realized it wasn't. Marquesela had a choice: ignore it and keep her job, or report it and risk everything. She chose the second. She spoke to the wrong people at first, people who smiled, people who nodded, people who later stopped returning her calls. Then the warnings started, subtle ones: a car following her too long, a phone call that hung up when she answered, an email that simply said, "Let it go." That's when the government stepped in, quietly. She was offered protection, relocation, a new routine, not because she was powerful, but because what she knew was. Marquesela became a federal witness, not a public one, a protected one. Her name sealed, her file classified, her life reduced to one rule: stay invisible. And she did. She moved cities, changed jobs, stopped posting online, learned new routes, new habits. She became exactly what the program wanted her to be: unremarkable, just another black mother in America doing her best. And that was the cruel irony. The same invisibility that kept her safe also made her vulnerable. Back in the parking lot, Marquesela scanned her surroundings like she always did, not paranoid, prepared. She noticed the police cruiser before it stopped, noticed the way it slowed, noticed the way the officer looked at her longer than necessary. She felt Caleb's grip tighten. "Mom," he whispered. "It's okay," she said softly. She meant it. She believed it. Because she had followed every rule: hands visible, movement slow, voice respectful. She had survived far worse than a grocery run. The officer stepped out, straightened his uniform. His eyes moved from her face to her hands, to her child, and lingered there. That's when Marquesela felt it, that familiar sinking weight. Not fear, recognition. The kind that says, "This isn't about what I did, it's about what you see." Still, she stayed calm, because calm had always kept her alive, and because her son was watching. She had no idea that in just a few minutes, everything she had worked so hard to keep hidden would collide with everything she couldn't control. And this quiet afternoon was about to become a federal incident. Officer Daniel Hargreave had been wearing a badge for 11 years. On paper, he was everything the department liked to show off: commendations, perfect attendance, strong command presence. Supervisors described him as confident.
The reports called him decisive. But there was another file, one that never made it into press releases. It started early in his career, a complaint from a teenager, dismissed. A warning from a store owner, filed away. A traffic stop that ended with someone shaken but unharmed. Officer discretion, they said. Every incident alone looked small, but together they formed a pattern. And patterns were something Daniel Hargreave hated being accused of. He believed the streets were dangerous. He believed hesitation got officers killed. And most importantly, he believed respect was something people owed him the moment he stepped out of his patrol car. That belief hardened over time. It showed in how he spoke, how close he stood, how quickly his hand moved. Not illegal, just unnecessary. Inside the department, Hargreave was known for something else. He didn't question orders, he didn't challenge supervisors, and he never embarrassed the badge. That made him useful. When complaints came in, they were handled. When body cam footage raised eyebrows, it was reviewed internally. When community leaders asked questions, they were told, "We're looking into it." And the file stayed closed. The truth was, the department didn't protect Hargreave because he was perfect. They protected him because he was predictable. He would do what he was told. He would escalate when he felt challenged, and he would never turn on his own. That made him safe, for them. That afternoon, Hargreave had already been on edge. A long shift, a supervisor riding him about arrest numbers, a vague radio call about a possible suspect near the grocery store. No name, no clear description, just enough to justify a stop. When he saw Marcasella, he didn't see a mother. He saw a match. Same general build, same location. Close enough. That was all he needed. Because confirmation bias doesn't wait for facts. It looks for permission. And the badge gave him plenty. He stepped out of the cruiser, adjusted his belt, and felt that familiar sense of control settle in. This was his space, his call. He noticed her calm and mistook it for resistance. He noticed her confidence and read it as defiance. He noticed her child and saw a complication. What Hargreave didn't know was that his routine stop was about to collide with forces far beyond his department. For years, he had operated under one assumption. If something went wrong, someone higher up would clean it up. That assumption had always been right, until today. As he approached Marcasella, he believed he was doing exactly what the system expected of him. Control the situation, assert authority, move fast. He didn't know that every step he took was being logged, tracked, and watched, because this time, the system wasn't on his side.
The moment Officer Daniel Hargreaves stepped closer, the air changed. Not dramatically, not loudly, just enough for Marcasella to feel it in her chest. She had felt it before, that invisible shift when a situation stops being about facts and starts being about power. "Ma'am, I need you to turn around," the officer said. His voice was controlled, too controlled. Marcasella didn't argue. She didn't ask why. She simply replied, "Officer, may I ask what this is about?" Her tone was calm, respectful, but the question itself irritated him. "Hands where I can see them," he repeated. Her hands were already visible. She raised them slightly anyway, because sometimes compliance isn't enough. It has to be exaggerated to be believed. Caleb stepped closer to her leg. "Mom," he whispered. Marcasella felt his fingers tremble through the fabric of her jeans. "It's okay," she said quietly, not turning her head. She was talking to him, but she was also talking to herself. The officer glanced around. A few people had stopped walking. A woman near the cart slowed down. A man across the lot pretended to check his phone. Witnesses, not allies. "You fit the description," the officer said. Marcasella frowned slightly. "Can you tell me the description, sir?" That was the wrong question. His jaw tightened. "I'm not required to debate with you," he replied. The words "with you" landed heavier than the rest.
He stepped behind her. Marcella felt the space close in. She inhaled slowly. She knew this moment, the one where you decide whether to speak or become invisible. She chose invisible. "Please don't do this," said Caleb. His voice cracked. The officer paused, just for half a second, then continued. The handcuffs came out, cold, heavy. The sound they made was small, but final. Click. Marcella flinched, not from pain, but from the realization that this was actually happening. In daylight, in public, in front of her child. "Officer," she said carefully, "I have not done anything wrong." Her voice shook now, not with fear, with restraint. "Turn around and face the vehicle," he ordered. She did, because resistance was dangerous, because survival came before dignity. Caleb cried out, "Mom, stop, please!" He reached for her arm. The officer raised his voice, "Step back!" Caleb froze. His hands hovered in the air, unsure where to go. Marcella's heart broke in places she didn't know existed. Phones were out now. Someone whispered, "Just comply." Another muttered, "She should have known better." No one said, "This is wrong." As the officer tightened the cuffs, Marcella looked down at her wrists, at the beige sleeves of her jacket, at the life she had worked so hard to keep ordinary, and she understood something with painful clarity. It didn't matter who she really was. It didn't matter what she had survived. It didn't matter that she was protected by the federal government. Right now, she was just another black woman being restrained in public. The officer turned her toward the patrol car. The door opened, and that was when the sound cut through everything. Not sirens, engines, multiple, deep, controlled, approaching fast. Marcella looked up. So did the officer. So did everyone watching. Black SUVs rolled into the lot one after another. No lights, no sirens, just presence. And in that moment, the arrest stopped being routine.
For a moment, no one moved. The black SUVs hadn't stopped yet. They were still rolling in. But the parking lot had gone quiet in a way Marcella recognized. Not peaceful, careful. People stood frozen with phones halfway raised. A man near the carts lowered his screen slightly, unsure. A woman by the entrance clutched her purse tighter. Everyone was watching. No one was speaking. This was the part that hurt the most. Not the cuffs, not the officer's voice, not even the fear in her son's eyes. It was the silence. Because silence feels like agreement when you're the one being restrained. Marcella scanned the faces around her. She didn't see cruelty. She saw hesitation, people calculating risk. If I say something, if I step in, if this goes wrong. Fear doesn't always look like anger. Sometimes it looks like looking away. Caleb stood a few feet behind her now, too scared to move forward, too scared to move back. His small chest rose and fell too fast. He wiped his face with the sleeve of his hoodie, trying to be quiet, as if being quieter might help. "Mom?" he whispered again. She turned her head just enough to see him. She wanted to tell him something reassuring, something simple, but every sentence felt too small, so she said the only thing that mattered. "I'm here." The officer shifted his weight. He noticed the crowd, not with concern, with awareness. Crowds made situations complicated. They created questions. They created records. He cleared his throat. "Everyone step back," he said. A few people obeyed. Others didn't move at all. Phones rose higher now. Someone muttered, "She must have done something." Another voice replied, "They always say that." The words floated through the air without landing anywhere, because no one owned them. This was how moments like this survived, not through shouting, not through violence, through diffusion, through everyone waiting for someone else to go first. Marcella thought about something she'd learned long ago. In emergencies, people don't freeze because they don't care. They freeze because authority has already spoken, and authority, in uniform, is loud, even when it says very little. The officer opened the back door of the cruiser. The interior was dark, confined. Caleb took a step forward without thinking. "No!" he cried. His voice broke the silence like glass. The officer turned sharply. "Step back right now!" Caleb froze again. Tears streamed down his face. He looked at the ground, ashamed, as if he had done something wrong. Marcusella closed her eyes for 1 second, just one, not to escape, to remember. She remembered why she stayed calm, why she kept her voice low, why she never gave the system an excuse, because her son was watching, and children remember these moments long after the details fade. The crowd shifted again. Then something changed, not visually, audibly. The sound of engines stopped. Doors opened, heavy doors, one by one. The officer paused. He didn't turn around yet, but his posture stiffened, because he recognized that sound. It wasn't local police. It wasn't backup. It was something else, something that didn't announce itself loudly, something that didn't need to. Marcusella opened her eyes. She didn't smile. She didn't relax. But for the first time since the cuffs clicked, she felt the balance of power tilt, and the silence of the crowd was about to be replaced by something far more dangerous for the officer: accountability.
The engines shut off one by one. Not abruptly, deliberately. It wasn't chaos, it was precision. The officer finally turned. His hand hovered near his radio, but didn't press it. 3 black SUVs sat in a clean line near the edge of the parking lot. No flashing lights, no department markings, just dark glass and stillness, the kind that doesn't ask for permission. Doors opened, slow, measured. Men and women stepped out, plain clothes, neutral colors, no weapons drawn, but every movement carried authority. Not the loud kind, the practiced kind. The crowd felt it immediately. Phones stopped shaking, whispers died. Even the air seemed to hold still, because instinct knows the difference between local power and federal presence. One of the agents looked directly at Marcusella, not at the cuffs, at her face, and gave a small, steady nod. Not reassurance, recognition. Then he turned to the officer. "Badge number," he said calmly, not loudly, not aggressively, just stated. The officer blinked. "Who are you?" he asked. The agent stepped closer, close enough to lower his voice. "Step away from the detainee." The word detainee landed like a weight. Not suspect, not woman, not mother. It wasn't a request. The officer hesitated, long enough to remember that hesitation had never mattered before. Then he straightened his shoulders. "Sir, this is a local matter." The agent raised his hand slightly, and the sentence ended. "Officer," the agent said, "you are currently detaining a protected federal witness." The world shifted, not dramatically, instantly. The officer's face drained of color. The crowd didn't understand the words yet, but they understood the reaction. Another agent stepped forward, a woman. She held out her hand. "Body cam," she said. The officer didn't move. She waited, not impatient, certain. Marcusella felt Caleb press against her leg. He didn't speak, he just held on. She rested her fingers against his hair as much as the cuffs allowed. She didn't look at the officer. She looked at the agents, because for the first time, she didn't have to prove anything. The agent glanced at the cuffs, then back at the officer. "Remove them," he said. "Now. Not later. Not after a call. Now." The officer's fingers trembled as he unlocked them. The metal fell away, light, almost unreal. Marcusella rubbed her wrists slowly. No rush, no drama, just relief. The female agent crouched slightly to Caleb's level. "You did nothing wrong," she said softly. Caleb nodded, still crying, because sometimes validation comes too late to stop the fear. The agent turned back to the officer. "You are done here," he said. "Internal Affairs, Civil Rights Division, Department of Justice." Each word was a door closing.
The crowd finally spoke, not loudly, but together. Murmurs turned to voices. Phones stayed up, but now they weren't recording a question. They were recording an answer. Marcusella stood straight. She didn't thank anyone. She didn't explain herself. She simply took her son's hand. Because dignity doesn't announce itself. It just stands. And for the first time that day, she wasn't invisible anymore.
The parking lot didn't return to normal, not immediately, because moments like this leave a residue. People stayed, they watched, not out of curiosity anymore, but out of instinct. They knew something important was happening. The lead agent stepped closer to Officer Hargreave, not aggressively, not defensively, just close enough that the conversation didn't need to be loud. "State your name," the agent said. Hargreave swallowed. "Officer Daniel Hargreave." The agent nodded once. "Officer Hargreave," he said, "do you understand why this interaction is now federal?" Hargreave hesitated. He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. "No, sir." The agent didn't react. "That hesitation," he said calmly, "is part of the problem." Another agent stood to the side, scrolling through a tablet. She didn't look up when she spoke. "You initiated detention without probable cause," she said. "You ignored a minor's distress, and you failed to identify a lawful basis when asked." She finally looked up. "All of that is recorded." Hargreave shifted his weight. "Sir, I was following protocol," he said. The agent tilted his head slightly. "Whose protocol?" Silence. Marcusella watched quietly. She didn't insert herself. She didn't explain her past. She had learned something long ago. The truth doesn't need to argue when the evidence is speaking. The lead agent turned briefly toward her. "Ma'am," he said, "are you injured?" "No," she replied. Her voice was steady. Then she added one sentence. "My son is watching." The agent paused, not for effect, for recognition. He turned back to Hargreave. "Children remember authority," he said. "They remember whether it protected them or threatened them." Hargreave looked at Caleb, really looked, for the first time. Caleb didn't look back. A police supervisor arrived then, late, out of breath, confused. "What's going on?" he asked. The agent handed him a badge. DOJ, Civil Rights. The supervisor's posture changed instantly. "This officer is relieved of duty," the agent said. "Effective now." Hargreave blinked. "What?" "Turn in your radio, your weapon, and your body cam." The supervisor hesitated, then complied, because this wasn't negotiable. Hargreave removed his equipment slowly. Each item placed in the agent's hands felt heavier than the last. Not because of the weight, because of what they represented. 11 years. Gone. The agent looked around the crowd. "Everyone is free to leave," he said, "but understand this. This incident is not over." He turned back to Marcusella. "You're safe," he said quietly. "Not as a promise, as a fact." Marcusella nodded. She didn't cry, she didn't smile. She simply took Caleb's hand, and as they walked away, the parking lot parted without a word. Not because she demanded space, because people finally understood who they had been silent for. The parking lot emptied, but the incident didn't. Because some moments don't end when people walk away, they begin. Inside one of the black SUVs, a folder was opened. Thick, red-tabbed, stamped with a code most officers never see. Markella Johnson's name sat at the top. Not bold, not highlighted, just printed. Because the people who needed to know already did. The lead agent spoke quietly into his phone. "Yes," he said, "it happened. Full detention, in front of the child." A pause. Then, "No, she's fine, but the footage is clean." Another pause. Then, "Yes, we're escalating." Back at headquarters, alarms didn't sound. Meetings weren't called. Something far more dangerous happened. Emails started moving. The file on Officer Daniel Hargreave was pulled from archives. Not the public one, the internal one.
the one marked Pattern Review. It hadn't been opened in years, not because it didn't matter, because opening it meant admitting someone had been wrong for a long time. Complaint after complaint appeared on the screen. Different names, different neighborhoods, same language. Unnecessary escalation, dismissive tone, felt targeted. Each one had been labeled inconclusive, individually forgettable, together undeniable. An analyst leaned back in his chair. "This should have been caught," he muttered. Another replied quietly, "It was." The truth was uncomfortable. Hargreave hadn't slipped through the cracks. He had been guided through them, transferred, reassigned, shielded, not because of malice, because of convenience. Meanwhile, Markella sat in a quiet room with Caleb. No cameras, no questions, just water, a blanket, time. Caleb hadn't spoken in several minutes. He stared at his shoes. Markella knelt in front of him. "You did nothing wrong," she said gently. He nodded. But children don't process fear that fast. An agent entered the room. "Ma'am," she said, "I need to explain something." Markella listened. She didn't interrupt, because she already knew what came next would be heavy. "Your protection status was violated," the agent continued. "That makes this more than misconduct. It makes it a federal breach." Markella closed her eyes, not from surprise, from exhaustion. Across the city, Internal Affairs issued a quiet order. All prior complaints reopened, no exceptions. A sentence like that ends careers and rewrites histories. The body cam footage was reviewed, not once, not twice, frame by frame. Tone, distance, language, every second counted. The conclusion was simple and devastating. The arrest was unjustified. The escalation was unnecessary. The outcome was avoidable. And now it was undeniable. Markella looked at her son, then back at the agent. "What happens now?" she asked. The agent answered honestly. "Now the system has to explain itself." Outside, news vans began to arrive, slowly, quietly, but inevitably, because when files like this open, they don't stay closed.
The story didn't break all at once. It leaked. A clip here, a still frame there, a shaky video from a phone that caught the moment the handcuffs came off. No context, just truth. By morning, it was everywhere. Local news first, then national, then international. Headlines didn't ask questions, they made statements. Black mother wrongfully detained outside grocery store. Federal agents intervene in local arrest. Child witnesses mother handcuffed in public. The city woke up to itself. Social media filled in the gaps faster than reporters could. Slow-motion breakdowns of body cam footage, side-by-side comparisons of past complaints, comment sections that refused to stay quiet. People recognized the officer. They recognized the tone. They recognized the pattern. Because it wasn't new. It had just been recorded clearly this time. Outside the grocery store, candles appeared, then signs, then voices. Not riots, not chaos, vigils. Mothers stood with their children. Fathers held signs they'd never planned to make. Dignity is not suspicious. My child is watching too. City officials scrambled. Statements were released, carefully worded. We are reviewing the incident. We take these matters seriously. We are committed to transparency. But transparency came too late. The footage spoke without filters. Markella refused interviews, not because she was afraid, because she was tired. She issued one statement, one sentence. My son deserves a world where calm is not mistaken for guilt. It went viral because it didn't shout, it didn't accuse, it simply named the truth. The police department went silent. Officers were told not to comment. Union leaders prepared defenses, but the facts didn't need defending. They needed explaining, and explanations were in short supply. Schools sent letters home. Parents talked. Children asked questions adults struggled to answer. Why did they stop her? Why did they put cuffs on her? Why didn't anyone help? There were no easy answers, only accountability. Late that night, the mayor addressed the city, not from a podium, from behind a desk. He spoke slowly, carefully, and for the first time admitted this should not have happened. The city didn't applaud, it waited, because apologies don't close files, actions do. And behind the scenes, actions were already underway.
Consequences rarely arrive loudly. They arrive quietly, on letterhead, behind closed doors, and by the time the public hears about them, they've already done their damage. Officer Daniel Hargreave was placed on administrative leave that same night, not a suspension, a separation. His badge was logged, his weapon secured, his access revoked. No ceremony, no send-off, just an empty locker by morning. The internal review moved faster than anyone expected because this time it wasn't political, it was procedural. The body cam footage was clear, the witness statements were consistent, the pattern was documented. There was nothing left to reinterpret. By the end of the week, the decision was final. Hargreave was terminated, not transferred, not reassigned, decertified. That word matters. It meant he could never wear a badge again, in any state, in any department. 11 years ended with a signature. But the consequences didn't stop with him. That's what made this different. Internal affairs widened the scope. Supervisors were questioned. Files were reopened. Why were complaints dismissed? Why were warnings ignored? Who signed off? Each answer led to another name, another desk, another quiet meeting. 2 supervisors resigned within days, not publicly, privately. The department called it personal reasons. The city knew better. Policy reviews followed, mandatory body cam audits, bias escalation training, civilian oversight with real authority, not promises, requirements, because the Department of Justice was watching. Marcusella was informed quietly, no press release, no cameras. An agent sat across from her and spoke plainly. "This isn't about you anymore," he said. "This is about what was allowed." She nodded, because she understood something most people didn't. Justice isn't loud when it's real, it's methodical. Caleb started therapy, not because he was broken, because someone had scared him with authority. The therapist asked him what he remembered most. He thought for a long time, then said, the sound of the cuffs. Community leaders met with city officials, not to argue, to demand structure, and for once the city listened, because silence had cost them too much. As for Hargreave, he disappeared from public view. No interviews, no statements, just a man learning, too late, that power without accountability always expires. The city settled into something unfamiliar, reflection, because this time the question wasn't what happened, it was why was it allowed to happen at all? And that question didn't point at one officer, it pointed at a system. 1 year later, the grocery store still stood on the same corner. Same automatic doors, same faded sign, same parking lot lines. But the feeling was different, because places remember things even when people try to forget them. Marcusella returned on a quiet morning, not for a statement, not for closure, just groceries. Caleb walked beside her now, taller than before, his backpack slung over one shoulder. He didn't grip her hand anymore, but he stayed close. They paused at the edge of the parking lot. Caleb looked around. "Is this where it happened?" he asked. Marcusella nodded. "Yes." He thought for a moment. "Are you scared?" She smiled softly. "No," she said. "I was scared that day." Then she added, "I'm not scared anymore." Inside the store, people recognized her, not as a headline, as a neighbor. Some nodded, some smiled. One woman quietly said, "I'm sorry I didn't say anything." Marcusella met her eyes. "Thank you for saying something now," she replied. because growth doesn't always arrive on time, but it still counts. Outside, a small plaque had been added near the entrance. No names, just words. Dignity is a right, not a suspicion. It hadn't been there before. Caleb stopped to read it. "Did they put that for you?" he asked. "For everyone," Marcusella said. The city had changed, slowly, imperfectly. Civilian review boards met monthly. Body cam audits were public. Training shifted from force to judgment. Not because the city became better overnight, but because it had been forced to look at itself. Marcusella had changed too. She spoke at schools now, not about fear, about calm, about knowing your worth even when others question it. She never raised her voice. She didn't have to. Caleb learned something different. He learned that authority can be challenged, that silence can be broken, that adults can be wrong and still be held accountable. Most importantly, he learned that his mother stood firm without becoming what hurt her. As they left the store, a patrol car passed by, slower than before. The officer inside nodded politely. Marcusella nodded back, not submissive, equal. They walked to their car, groceries loaded, sunlight warm, an ordinary moment, the kind that shouldn't be extraordinary. Marcusella paused before opening the door. She looked at her son. "At the end of the day," she said, "justice didn't come because of who I was. It came because someone was watching." Caleb nodded. "I was," he said. She smiled. "So were we all." This story isn't about villains or heroes. It's about what happens when power meets accountability. If this moved you, like the video, comment where you're watching from, subscribe, because the next story asks an even harder question. Because dignity should never depend on who's watching.